On New Year's Eve, my wife made a toast. The best gift for me would be if you didn't exist in my life at all. So I withdrew all the money from the account and disappeared, leaving a note. After reading it, my wife turned pale and fainted. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now, let's dive into today's story. Patrick Rourke stood with his back against the cream-colored wall of his mother's living room, the paper cup of cheap champagne warming in his palm. The house smelled like his childhood, pine cleaner, old carpet, and the faint musk of basement dampness that never quite went away no matter how many dehumidifiers his father had bought over the years. Around him, the familiar chaos of family gathered momentum as midnight approached. His uncle's laugh boomed from the kitchen. Someone had turned up the television too loud. A child shrieked with delight somewhere upstairs. He wore the same gray sweater he'd worn for the past 3 New Year's Eves. The cuffs had started to fray, but the wool was thick and warm. Daphne had mentioned more than once that he should throw it out, that it made him look like he didn't care about himself. He did care. He just didn't care about the same thing she did. Patrick took a sip of the champagne and felt the bubbles sting the roof of his mouth. Across the room, Daphne laughed at something his cousin Angela had said. Her head tilted back, exposing the line of her throat. She'd spent an hour on her hair that evening, curling it into waves that cascaded over her shoulders. The red dress she wore was new, bought 3 weeks ago with money from their joint account. He'd seen the charge. She hadn't mentioned it. He watched her move through the room like she was performing. Each gesture seemed calculated for maximum effect. She touched people's arms when she spoke to them. She smiled wide, showing all her teeth. When his mother approached with a plate of cookies, Daphne declined with a theatrical wave of her hand, saying something about watching her figure. His mother's smile tightened just slightly at the corners. The countdown to midnight started somewhere. People began gathering in the living room, jostling for space. Patrick remained against the wall, observing. His sister Maggie caught his eye from across the room and gave him a small, sympathetic smile. She knew. She'd known for months, maybe years. They'd never discussed it directly, but siblings didn't always need words. 5 minutes, someone shouted. Daphne appeared at his side suddenly, her perfume overwhelming in the crowded space. Something floral and expensive that made his sinuses ache. She didn't look at him directly, just positioned herself nearby, close enough that people would see them as a unit, but not close enough to touch. "You're being antisocial," she murmured, her smile never faltering as she surveyed the room. "I'm here," Patrick said quietly. "Barely." She laughed, light and dismissive. "You could at least pretend to enjoy yourself. It's a party." He didn't respond. He'd learned that responding only extended these conversations, turned them into arguments that she would later recount to her friends as evidence of his coldness, his inability to communicate. Silence was cleaner. The room grew louder as midnight approached. Someone started passing out noisemakers. The television displayed Times Square, the ball suspended and glittering above the crowd. Patrick felt the weight of another year settling on his shoulders, another year of this, of pretending, of holding things together through sheer force of will. 3 minutes. His mother moved to the center of the room, her face flushed with wine and happiness. She'd always loved these gatherings, loved having her family close. Patrick was her eldest. She taught him responsibility early, showed him how to balance a checkbook when he was 12, how to change a tire at 14, how to show up even when you didn't want to, especially when you didn't want to. Daphne clinked her glass with a pen someone had handed her. The sharp ting-ting-ting cut through the noise. "Everyone, everyone." She was smiling, radiant. The room quieted, faces turning toward her with expectation. Patrick felt something cold settle in his stomach. "I want to make a toast," Daphne announced. Her voice carried easily. She'd always been good at projecting. "Before we ring in the new year." People shifted, making space. His father muted the television. Angela raised her phone, recording. Patrick remained perfectly still. "I've been thinking about what I want for this next year," Daphne continued. She paused, timing it perfectly. "And I realized the best gift I could receive, the thing that would make me truly happy," another pause. Her smile widened. Would be if my husband didn't exist in my life at all. The silence that followed had texture. It pressed against Patrick's eardrums. Someone's laugh died halfway through. He saw his sister's mouth open slightly in shock. His mother's face went pale, then red. His Uncle Jim looked down at his shoes. A few people laughed nervously, unsure. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe they'd misheard. Daphne laughed too, bright and clear. I mean it. Wouldn't that be something? Patrick felt the heat rise in his chest, spreading up his neck. His hands remained steady on the cup. Years of practice had taught him control. He learned as a boy that reacting gave people ammunition. His father had yelled, and his mother had used those moments against him for days afterward. Patrick had decided early that he would be different. He would be calm. He would be reliable. He would endure. He met Daphne's eyes across the room. She was still smiling, but something flickered there, a challenge, maybe, or a test. She wanted him to react, to yell, to make a scene that would prove he was the problem, that would give her the story she wanted to tell. He nodded once, just once. Then he set his cup down on the near surface and walked to the front door. Patrick, his mother's voice. He didn't turn around. The cold air outside hit him like a slap. Cedar Ridge in late December was unforgiving, the kind of cold that found every gap in your clothing and settled into your bones. Patrick stood on the front porch, his breath forming clouds in the darkness. Cars lined the street, their windshields already frosting over. Christmas lights still glowed on some of the houses, tired and garish against the snow. Behind him, the door opened. He knew the footsteps. Patrick. Maggie's voice was soft. She grabbed her coat. That was... Don't. She had no right. Maggie. He turned to face his sister. She was 3 years younger, had 2 kids, and a husband who actually liked her. I don't want to talk about it. You can't just let her. What do you want me to do? The words came out sharper than he'd intended. Go back in there? Make a scene? Give her what she wants. Maggie wrapped her arms around herself. You deserve better than this. Patrick looked past her at the house. Through the window, he could see people moving around again. The television was back on. Someone had started the countdown without them. They would ring in the new year, and tomorrow everyone would pretend this hadn't happened, or they would gossip about it over coffee and decide which side to take. I know, he said quietly. Inside, people shouted. The new year had arrived. Maggie touched his arm. Are you okay? I will be. Patrick drove home in silence. The streets of Cedar Ridge were empty. Everyone tucked into their celebrations or already passed out drunk. His truck, a 15-year-old Ford with 200,000 miles on it, rumbled through the cold. The heater barely worked. He'd meant to fix it, but there had always been something else that needed fixing first. The washer, the roof, Daphne's car. Their house sat at the end of Maple Street, a small ranch with beige siding and a detached garage. Patrick had repainted it himself 2 summers ago. He'd fixed the sagging porch steps. He'd replaced the water heater when it died. The lawn was neatly trimmed, the driveway cleared of snow. It looked like a house where responsible people lived. He parked in his usual spot and sat for a moment, engine running. Daphne had taken her car to the party. She'd left an hour before him, saying she needed time to get ready. He'd known even then that she wanted to arrive separately, to not be tied to him in people's minds. The house was dark. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. The silence felt different now, heavier. He didn't turn on the lights. Instead, he walked through the darkness to their bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Patrick had worked since he was 16, first at the grocery store, bagging and stocking, then at the factory after high school, third shift for 8 years until his body couldn't take it anymore. Now he was in logistics, routing, inventory management, problem solving. The pay was decent. He'd always paid the bills early, never missed a deadline, never bounced a check. He'd met Daphne at a friend's barbecue 7 years ago. She'd been bright and funny, full of stories. She'd made him laugh, something that didn't happen often. Within 6 months, they were married. Within a year, things had started to shift. The changes were subtle at first. Comments about his clothes, suggestions that he wasn't ambitious enough, comparisons to her friends' husbands who had better jobs, nicer cars. She'd started spending more time with her parents, calling them multiple times a day. When Patrick mentioned that they should probably budget more carefully, she'd accused him of trying to control her. He'd tried. He'd really tried. He'd taken her to dinner, even when money was tight. He'd listened to her complaints about her job, her friends, her mother. He'd fixed things around the house without being asked. He'd thought that if he just worked hard enough, proved himself reliable enough, things would get better. They hadn't. Patrick stood and walked to the closet. He pulled down the suitcase from the top shelf, the same one he'd used when they'd gone to visit her parents last Christmas. The visit had been a disaster. Her father had spent 3 days listing Patrick's shortcomings over dinner. Her mother had sighed every time Patrick spoke. Daphne had sat there, saying nothing, letting it happen. He packed methodically. Not everything, just enough. Clothes for a week. His toiletries. The watch his grandfather had left him. He went to his desk and gathered his documents. Birth certificate, social security card, passport, the deed to the truck that was in his name only. His work laptop. The external hard drive where he kept backups of everything important. In the kitchen, he made coffee. It was 3 in the morning. The house creaked around him, settling into the cold. He sat at the table with his laptop and began the process he'd been mentally rehearsing for months. The joint bank account showed $47,832. He'd kept a separate spreadsheet, obsessive, maybe but necessary. Every deposit he'd made was documented. Every bill he'd paid. The mortgage, the utilities, the insurance. Out of that $47,832, he'd contributed $43,200. Daphne's contributions totaled $4,632. The rest had been spent on clothes, on dinners with her friends, on spontaneous purchases she called treating herself. Patrick created a new account in his name only. He transferred $43,200, leaving $4,632 behind. Not out of generosity, out of fairness. He'd always believed in fairness, even when others didn't extend him the same courtesy. He reviewed their bills. The mortgage was in both names. There was nothing he could do about that without her signature. The utilities were in his name. The insurance was split. He made a list, neat and precise, of what she would need to handle. Then he wrote the note. His handwriting was careful, each letter formed deliberately. He'd never been good with words, had never known how to express the things that mattered. But this was simple. This was just facts. You said you wanted a life without me. I'm giving you exactly that. Please don't contact my family again. Patrick. He placed the note on the table, anchoring it with a salt shaker. He looked around the kitchen one last time. The refrigerator hummed. The faucet dripped. He'd been meaning to fix that. Not anymore. Patrick loaded his suitcase into the truck and drove away as the first gray light of dawn began to break over Cedar Ridge. He didn't look back at the house. There was nothing there that belonged to him anymore, nothing worth remembering. Daphne's car pulled into the driveway at 9 in the morning. Patrick knew because his sister told him later. She'd stayed at her parents' house overnight. Not unusual lately. When she found the note, she'd called her mother first, not the police. That told him everything he needed to know. Patrick had checked into a motel on the outskirts of town. The kind of place with rates by the week and a front desk clerk who didn't ask questions. The room smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner, but it was warm and the bed was decent. He'd slept for 4 hours straight, better than he'd slept in months. His phone started ringing around 10. Daphne's name flashed on the screen. He declined the call. She called again. Declined. She sent texts. Where are you? What the hell is this? You can't just leave like this. Call me right now. You're being ridiculous. Patrick turned off his phone and went for a walk. Cedar Ridge was a small town, the kind where 3 generations of families stayed put and everyone knew your business. Main Street had the same businesses it had had for 30 years. A diner, a hardware store, a pharmacy with a lunch counter. Patrick walked past them all, hands shoved in his pockets, breath fogging in the cold. He thought about the look on Daphne's face when she'd made that toast. The smile. The confidence. She'd been so sure he would take it, would swallow it down like he'd swallowed everything else. So sure of her power over him. What she didn't understand, what she'd never understood, was that endurance wasn't weakness. Silence wasn't surrender. He'd been holding things together not because he was afraid to leave, but because he'd made a promise. In front of God and family, he'd promised. And Patrick kept his promises. But she'd released him. In front of everyone, she'd said she wanted him gone. So he was gone. He stopped at a coffee shop he'd never been to before. It was new, opened in the past year, all exposed brick and mismatched furniture. The barista was young, probably college-aged, with purple streaks in her hair. She smiled at him like he was a normal customer, like she had no idea who he was. "What can I get you?" "Black coffee. Large." "That's it? No flavor, no cream? Just coffee?" She grinned. "Brave. I like it." Patrick paid and sat by the window. He watched people walk past, bundled against the cold, carrying shopping bags, living their ordinary lives. None of them knew him. None of them cared about his marriage or his wife or the scene at his mother's house. The anonymity felt like relief. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Still off. Just the vibration of held messages trying to break through. Across the street, he saw Angela walking with her husband. They were laughing about something, their heads bent close together. Patrick remembered when he and Daphne used to walk like that. Before the criticism started. Before every conversation became a negotiation. There'd been a moment, maybe 2 years into the marriage, when he'd suggested they see a counselor. Daphne had laughed. "We don't need therapy. You just need to lighten up." Then she told her mother, who had called him and said that counseling was for people who didn't know how to communicate. That if he just listened to Daphne more, tried harder to make her happy, everything would be fine. He tried harder. It had never been enough. Patrick finished his coffee and walked back to the motel. Inside, he turned on his phone. 63 messages. 28 missed calls. He deleted them without reading. Then he called his sister. "Oh, thank God," Maggie said immediately. "Where are you? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. Mom's losing her mind. Daphne showed up here screaming that you abandoned her, that you stole money." "I didn't steal anything. I took what I earned." Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "I know. Tell Mom I'm okay. Tell her I'll call her in a few days." "Patrick, what are you going to do?" He looked around the motel room. The thin curtains. The scratched dresser. The TV bolted to the wall. "I'm going to start over." The story Daphne told her parents was simple and dramatic. Patrick had abandoned her without warning. He'd stolen all their money. He'd been controlling and cold for years, and now he'd finally shown his true colors. She cried when she told it. Her mother held her. Her father called Patrick names that would have started a fight in any other circumstance. Patrick's mother called him 3 days after New Year's. He was at work when his phone buzzed, sitting in his small office reviewing shipping manifests. He let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message during his lunch break. "Patrick, honey, it's Mom. I know things are complicated right now. Daphne's been here twice, and she's very upset. She says you took everything. She says she doesn't know how she's going to pay the bills. Your father thinks we should stay out of it, but I'm worried about you. Please call me back. Please." He didn't call back. Not yet. Instead, he focused on work. His boss, Jim Hendricks, was a man in his 60s who'd run the warehouse for 30 years. He noticed everything but said little. 3 days after Patrick moved out, Jim called him into his office. "You all right?" Jim asked, leaning back in his chair. "I'm fine. You sleeping somewhere decent?" Patrick hesitated. "Motel on Route 9. Jim nodded slowly. "My brother-in-law has a rental property. Small place, nothing fancy. Furnished. He's looking for a reliable tenant. Month to month. You interested?" "I can't afford much right now." "Didn't ask what you could afford. Asked if you were interested." Patrick met his boss's eyes. Jim had always been fair to him, had promoted him twice, had never once asked about his personal life. This was more than professional courtesy. This was kindness. "Yes," Patrick said. "I'm interested." The apartment was a 1-bedroom above a garage, accessible by an exterior staircase. It had a kitchenette, a bathroom with a shower stall, and a living space that doubled as a bedroom. The furniture was old but clean, a couch, a table with 2 chairs, a bed frame. The windows looked out over a yard where nothing grew but weeds. It was perfect. Patrick moved in on a Saturday. He owned so little that it took 1 trip. He set up his laptop on the table, hung his few clothes in the closet, and stood in the middle of his new space, feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. His phone buzzed. Another call from Daphne. He'd blocked her number eventually, but she'd started calling from other phones. Her mother's, her father's, friends, each time with the same message. He needed to talk to her, needed to fix this, needed to come home. Home. As if that house had ever been home. Patrick had grown up in Cedar Ridge, had known every street and shortcut, but the town felt different now. Smaller, tighter. He couldn't go to the grocery store without someone stopping him to ask if he and Daphne were working things out. The diner his family had gone to for years suddenly felt hostile. Daphne's cousin worked there, and the whispers started the moment he walked in. So he stopped going. He found new places. A different grocery store 2 towns over. A gas station off the highway. He learned how to exist in the margins, how to move through the world without leaving ripples. 2 weeks after he'd left, Maggie called him. He was eating dinner alone, frozen pizza heated in the oven, when her name appeared on his screen. "Hey," he said, "we need to talk." Her tone made him set down his food. "What happened?" "Daphne showed up at Mom's house today, with her parents. They want to have a meeting. They want you to come back, sit down, talk things through." "No, Patrick, they're not going to stop." Her dad's threatening legal action. "For what?" "I didn't do anything illegal. They're saying you abandoned her, that you have a responsibility." Patrick laughed, short and sharp. "Responsibility? That's rich." I know, okay? But Mom's getting pressure from them. And what do you think I should do?" Maggie was quiet for a moment. "I think you should do what's best for you. But I also think you should talk to a lawyer, just to be safe." The lawyer's name was Robert Ellis, and his office was in a building that had once been a house, converted poorly with thin walls and flickering lights. Ellis was in his 50s, with gray hair and a manner that was both friendly and direct. "Tell me what happened," he said. Patrick told him. The toast, the money, the note. Ellis listened without interrupting, taking occasional notes on a yellow legal pad. When Patrick finished, Ellis leaned back in his chair. "Did you take any money that wasn't yours?" "No. I documented every deposit. I only took what I contributed." "Good. Do you have proof of that?" Patrick pulled out his laptop and opened the spreadsheet. Ellis studied it, nodding. "This is thorough. Very thorough." He looked up. "What about the house?" "Both our names are on the mortgage. Are you planning to pursue any claim to it?" Patrick thought about the house, the repairs he'd made, the weekends spent painting and fixing, the mortgage payments he'd never missed. "No," he said. "You sure?" "Because you have a legal right." "I don't want it." Ellis studied him. "Why?" "Because everything in that house belongs to her. The furniture she picked out, the dishes she had to have. I don't want any of it." "All right. Then my advice is simple. Document everything. Keep records of all communication. Don't respond to her directly. If she or her family contact you, refer them to me." That's it. You didn't do anything wrong, Patrick. You have the right to leave a marriage that's not working. The money you took was yours. The only complication might be the house, but if you're willing to walk away from it, there's nothing they can do. Patrick felt something loosen in his chest. "Thank you." As he stood to leave, Ellis said, "One more thing. She's going to escalate. When people realize they can't control you anymore, they panic. Be prepared for that." Ellis was right. Within a week, the calls intensified. Daphne's parents started showing up at places they knew Patrick might be. His mother's house. His work. Once, her father waited outside the apartment, sitting in his car for 2 hours until Patrick threatened to call the police. But the real escalation came when the bills started arriving. Patrick got a call from the mortgage company. The payment was overdue. 2 months overdue, they said. Patrick checked his records. He'd paid his half into the joint account before he left. Daphne hadn't paid hers. Then came the credit card company. Then the car insurance. Then the utilities. Daphne had stopped paying everything. Patrick called Ellis. "I'm not responsible for her half," he said. "Legally, you might be, if your name's on the account. I took my name off the utilities. But the mortgage? The mortgage is going to be a problem. Both of you are equally responsible. If she's not paying, it affects your credit. So what do I do?" 2 options. 1, you pay your half and try to recoup it later. 2, you let it default and accept the credit hit. Patrick thought about his credit score. Perfect for 15 years. He'd been so careful, so disciplined. I'm not paying her half, he said. Then prepare for consequences. The consequences came swiftly. Letters from collection agencies. Automated calls at all hours. His credit score began to drop. Patrick watched it happen with a strange detachment, like observing a storm from behind glass. At work, he kept his head down. Jim never asked about his personal life, but Patrick could see the concern in the older man's eyes. The other workers had heard the rumors, some sympathetic, some skeptical. Patrick ignored them all. One Friday evening, as Patrick was locking up his office, Jim stopped him in the hallway. "You doing okay with money?" he asked. "I'm managing. Because if you need extra hours, I'm fine. But thank you." Jim nodded. "You're a good worker, Patrick. Best I've got. Whatever's going on, don't let it derail you." Patrick felt an unexpected tightness in his throat. "I won't." That night, alone in his apartment, Patrick made a spreadsheet of all the accounts in his name, all the bills that were mounting. The mortgage he couldn't control, but the rest he could document. He could prove what he'd paid and what he hadn't. He could show exactly when Daphne had stopped holding up her end. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Patrick." It was Daphne. She sounded tired, strained. "We need to talk." "No, we don't. Please. Can we just talk? 5 minutes." "No. I don't understand why you're doing this. Why you're being so cruel." Patrick closed his eyes. "Cruel? You think I'm being cruel? You left me with nothing. The bills are piling up. I can't afford to live. My parents." "Your parents can help you. They have been helping me. They're tired of it. Patrick, please. If you would just come back, we could work this out. We could go to counseling. We could—" "You said you wanted a life without me. In front of my entire family. You got what you asked for. I didn't mean it. I was just upset. You meant it. You meant it for years." Silence. Then, in a smaller voice, "What do you want from me?" "Nothing. I don't want anything from you." "Then why are you punishing me?" Patrick opened his eyes and looked around his small apartment. The second-hand furniture, the empty walls, the silence that he'd come to cherish. "I'm not punishing you, Daphne. I'm just not protecting you anymore. There's a difference." He hung up before she could respond. The truth about the money came out in February. Patrick received a letter from the bank, formal and dense with legal language. There had been irregularities with one of the accounts. Joint signatures on loans that didn't match. They were requesting documentation. Patrick called the bank immediately. The representative was polite but firm. "We've identified 3 loans taken out in the past 18 months under both names," she said. "The signatures don't match our records for Mr. Rourke. I didn't take out any loans. We understand. We've compared the signatures, and there appears to be a forgery. We're required to report this." Patrick felt cold. Report it to who? The authorities. This is fraud. He sat down heavily in his chair. "What happens now? We'll need you to come in and provide a statement. We'll need documentation of your identity and confirmation that you didn't authorize these loans." Patrick went to the bank the next day. The manager, a woman named Carol Hartley whom he'd known casually for years, looked uncomfortable as she laid out the documents. "I'm sorry about this, Patrick," she said, "but we have to follow protocol." He looked at the loan applications. His signature was there but wrong. Close enough that someone might not notice at first glance, but clearly not his actual handwriting. The amounts ranged from $5,000 to $15,000. "Where did the money go?" he asked. Carol pulled up account statements. "Various places. Cash withdrawals mostly. A few large purchases. Nothing we can easily track. And Daphne, we can't speculate about who signed these, Patrick, but we do need to pursue this." Patrick nodded slowly. "Do what you need to do." He called Ellis from the parking lot. "Don't panic," the lawyer said immediately. "This actually helps you." "How does fraud help me?" "Because it proves you were the responsible party. It proves she was doing things behind your back. When this comes out, and it will come out, the sympathy shifts in your favor." "I don't want sympathy." "No, but you'll need it. Small town, like Cedar Ridge, reputation matters. This changes the narrative." Patrick didn't care about the narrative, but he cared about the truth. The investigation took weeks. Police interviews, bank statements reviewed. Patrick provided his spreadsheet, his documentation, proof of every transaction he'd made. The evidence was overwhelming. Daphne had forged his signature 3 times to take out loans. She'd used the money for expenses she didn't want to discuss. Designer clothes, trips with her friends, debts she'd accumulated before they'd married. And she'd assumed, arrogantly, that marriage meant his identity was hers to use. It didn't. By March, the charges were filed. No arrest, no dramatic scene. Just paperwork and court dates. Financial fraud. Forgery. The penalties were significant. Fines, potential jail time, permanent marks on her record. Patrick felt nothing when he heard. No satisfaction. No vindication. Just the quiet certainty that consequences had finally caught up with someone who'd thought they were immune. His mother called him that evening. "Patrick, honey, I heard about Daphne." "Yeah. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Mom. I want to say I'm sorry. For not seeing it earlier. For not understanding what you were going through." Patrick sat down on his couch. "You couldn't have known. But I should have. You're my son. I should have known. It's okay. It's not okay. None of this is okay. But I want you to know we're on your side. We've always been on your side." After they hung up, Patrick sat in the silence of his apartment. Outside, the March wind rattled the windows. Inside, everything was still. He thought about Daphne, about the woman he'd married. She'd been charming once, full of life. Or maybe she'd just been good at pretending. Maybe the version of her he'd fallen in love with had never really existed at all. It didn't matter anymore. The house went into foreclosure in April. Patrick heard about it through his sister. Daphne had moved in with her parents, who'd finally stopped enabling her after the fraud charges became public. Her friends had distanced themselves. Her job, something administrative at her father's company, had been quietly eliminated. Patrick didn't feel sorry for her. Sympathy required believing someone was a victim. Daphne wasn't a victim. She was just someone facing the results of her own choices. His credit was recovering. The apartment felt more like home each day. He bought a coffee maker, a few plants that struggled but survived. Jim had given him another raise, recognizing the overtime Patrick put in without complaint. Life was simple, clean, quiet, and for the first time in years, Patrick felt like he could breathe. The summer passed in a blur of routine. Patrick worked, went home, cooked simple meals for himself. On weekends, he helped his mother with projects around her house. He saw his sister and her kids. He existed in the spaces between drama, in the peaceful mundanity of a life without conflict. Daphne's trial, if it could be called that, was brief. She pleaded guilty to reduced charges. Financial fraud. Forgery. The judge was stern but not cruel. Probation. Fine she would struggle to pay. Restitution to the bank. Her credit destroyed. Her reputation in Cedar Ridge shattered. Patrick didn't attend the hearing. He didn't need to see it. Ellis called him afterward with the details. "It's over," the lawyer said. "She can't come after you for anything now. The divorce will be straightforward." "Good. You doing all right?" "I am. You sound different." Patrick considered this. "I feel different." The divorce papers arrived in August. Patrick signed them without reading the details. He didn't care about terms or settlements. He just wanted the legal binding to end, the paperwork to reflect what had been true for months now. They were finished. He ran into Angela at the grocery store in September. She saw him first, her expression shifting from surprise to something like guilt. "Patrick," she said. "Hey, how are you? I mean, really, how are you?" "I'm good." She studied his face. "You look good. Different, but good." "Thanks. I'm sorry, for that night. For not saying anything." "It's okay. It's not okay. What she said. What she did." Angela shook her head. "A lot of us feel bad about not speaking up." Patrick shifted his grocery basket. "It doesn't matter now. Maybe not. But I want you to know, we see it now. We see what was really happening." After she left, Patrick continued his shopping. He picked up vegetables, chicken, bread, normal things for a normal life. At the checkout, the young cashier smiled at him. "Find everything okay?" "I did. Thanks. Have a great day." Patrick carried his groceries to his truck. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the smell of distant fires and dying leaves. He drove back to his apartment, unpacked his food, made dinner. The knock came just as he sat down to eat. Patrick looked through the window first. Daphne stood on the landing outside his door. She looked thinner than he remembered, her hair pulled back severely. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. He debated not answering, but something made him open the door. "Patrick," she said. "Daphne, can I come in?" "No." She flinched slightly. "Please, I just need a few minutes." "You need to leave. I know what you think of me. I know what everyone thinks. And you're right. You're all right. I was terrible to you. I was cruel and selfish," and her voice broke. "I destroyed everything." Patrick kept his hand on the doorframe, blocking entry. "What do you want?" "Nothing. I don't want anything from you. I just needed to say I'm sorry." "Okay. That's it? Just okay. What else do you want me to say?" Tears ran down her face now. "I want you to yell at me. I want you to tell me I'm horrible. I want you to react, to feel something." Patrick looked at her and felt exactly what he'd expected to feel. Nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no lingering hurt. She was just a person he used to know, someone who'd once mattered but didn't anymore. "I do feel something," he said quietly. "I feel relieved that I'm not responsible for you anymore, that I don't have to fix your mistakes or cover for your choices, that I can just live my life without wondering what you're going to do next. I ruined your life." "No, you ruined yours. Mine's actually better now." She stared at him, disbelieving. "How can you say that? I humiliated you. I destroyed your credit. You freed me," Patrick said. "You told everyone you wanted me gone. And I went. And I'm happy. You can't be happy. Not after everything I did. Watch me." Daphne wiped her face with shaking hands. "My parents won't let me stay with them anymore. None of my friends will talk to me. I can't get a job because everyone knows what I did. I'm living in a studio apartment with roaches and working at a gas station. My life is over. Your life isn't over. It's just not easy anymore. I hate you," she said suddenly, venomously. "I hate that you're fine, that you just moved on like I never mattered. You wanted a life without me," Patrick reminded her. "You got fair." Patrick felt something flicker then, not anger, but a cold clarity. "You stood in front of my family and humiliated me. You forged my signature. You stole from me. You spent years making me feel like I was the problem. And now you want to talk about fair? I was unhappy. So leave. That's what adults do. They leave. They don't destroy someone on the way out." Daphne's face crumpled. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did. You meant all of it. Every word, every action. You wanted to hurt me because hurting me made you feel powerful. Well, congratulations. You did hurt me, but I healed. And you're still here, trying to make this my problem. I needed you to know I'm sorry." Patrick shook his head slowly. "You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry it didn't work out the way you planned. But you're not actually sorry. That's not true." "It is. Because if you were really sorry, you'd accept the consequences and move on. But you're here, trying to make me feel bad for you, trying to get me to fix this somehow. And I won't." He stepped back and began to close the door. "Patrick, please." "Goodbye, Daphne." He closed the door gently. No slam, no dramatic exit. Just a simple closing of one thing and the opening of space for what came next. He heard her crying on the other side for a moment. Then footsteps retreating down the stairs. A car door. An engine starting. The sound fading into the distance. Patrick returned to his dinner. The food had gone cold, but he ate it anyway. Then he washed his dishes, dried them, put them away. He sat on his couch with a book he'd been reading. Outside, the sun set orange and purple behind the trees. His phone buzzed once. "Maggie, Mom said Daphne was at your place. You okay?" Patrick typed back, "I'm fine. She won't come back." "How do you know?" "Because there's nothing here for her anymore." He set the phone down and returned to his book. The apartment was quiet, peaceful. New Year's Eve came again. 1 full year since the toast, since the breaking point, since everything had changed. Patrick's mother had invited him to another gathering, smaller this time, just immediate family. He declined politely, not because he was angry or hurt, but because he didn't need it. Instead, he stayed in his apartment. He'd cooked himself a decent meal, nothing fancy, just chicken with vegetables and rice. He'd learned to cook over the past year, had discovered he actually enjoyed the process. The measuring, the timing, the way ingredients transformed with heat and patience. At 11:30, he poured himself a small glass of whiskey, A bottle Jim had given him as a Christmas gift. He sat by the window and watched the snow fall. It came down steady and thick, covering the world in white. His phone rang at midnight. Maggie, probably, or his mother. He let go to voicemail. This moment was his, and he wanted to keep it private. Patrick thought about the year that had passed, the way everything had fallen apart, and then slowly, carefully, rebuilt itself into something new. He learned what he should have known all along, that being alone was different from being lonely. That peace was better than chaos. That walking away didn't make you weak. Sometimes it made you free. He thought about Daphne briefly. According to Maggie, she'd moved away from Cedar Ridge, somewhere south, maybe Tennessee or Georgia, working retail, living quietly, trying to outrun her reputation. He hoped she'd found some measure of peace, but he didn't think about it often. The whiskey burned pleasantly as he swallowed. Outside, the snow continued to fall, muffling the world. No fireworks, no celebrations. Just the soft quiet of a new year arriving without fanfare. Patrick's phone buzzed with texts. Happy New Year messages from his sister, his mother, a few coworkers. He read them and felt grateful. Not for the messages themselves, but for the fact that these relationships had survived. His family had stood by him once they understood the truth. The good people had remained. He finished his whiskey and rinsed the glass. In the bathroom, he brushed his teeth and looked at his reflection. He looked older than he had a year ago, but not worse. There were lines around his eyes, gray threading through his hair. He looked like what he was, a man who'd survived something difficult and come through changed. In bed, Patrick set his alarm for the morning. He had errands to run, groceries to buy. His mother wanted help installing a new shelf in her garage. Normal things, simple things, the kind of life he'd built for himself, brick by brick, day by day. As he drifted towards sleep, he thought about the toast that had started everything, the words that had cut so deeply in a moment but had ultimately freed him. She'd asked for a world without him in it. He'd given her exactly that. And in doing so, he'd given himself something better, a world where he mattered, where his efforts meant something, where he was enough exactly as he was. Patrick smiled slightly in the darkness. Then he closed his eyes and let sleep take him, peaceful and dreamless, into a new year that was entirely, completely his own.